set these down.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Brandon Flowers, Director of Sales Enablement at Power Factors, and this is Bobby Joe.
Hello.
Head of Sales Enablement.
Head of Sales Enablement. I stand too close to that. It gives a little feedback, so I gotta.
Oh, sorry. Okay, figuring the mics out.
Yeah, all good.
But today we're going to talk about solo enablement. We don't have any slides for you, so you're going to see lots of different presentation styles today, because I've seen lots of PowerPoints and I've seen minimal PowerPoints. I really liked Josh's 2-slider. That was great. We don't have any slides except for, I guess, if you count this as a slide. But we're going to talk about solo enablement. So by show of hands, how many of you are a team of one? All right, less than I would have thought, honestly. A team of less than 3. Okay, a few more hands. I've seen some bigger teams in here, let's say like more than 5.
Oh, got some big teams.
Majority of the room, okay. Well, for those of you in tiny teams, teams of 1 or 3, you're gonna get the most out of this probably, because everything we're dealing with is a team of 1. If you're a part of a bigger team though, you'll still get some nuggets out of this, I think. There's still gonna be some things that we do that you might think about as maybe the head of your own small team. And how you might conduct yourself outside of sales enablement with the other teams.
So you're an army of 1,
so
enabling a team,
yeah.
or sometimes multiple teams of revenue folks. Where do you start?
Great question. So where do you start when you're the only one, especially if you're like me, if you're new to the company, right? You didn't come from another role at that same company. Where do you get started? How do you prioritize? How do you educate the rest of the company on how to work with you? The way that I found to do that was to build a team charter. And that's something that, again, I'll just do a show of hands again. Who here has a team charter that they've created? All right, not enough hands, I would say. This has been a bit of a magic bullet for me, and I think for Bobby Joe as well. She'll add to this.
For sure.
But I was able to go to our executive board, CEO included, and tell them how to work with me. Tell them how to measure me. Tell them what to expect and what not to expect from me. And I think a lot of us as sales enablement professionals, I certainly did the first time, my first go round as a sales enablement person, I struggled with that. I struggled with expectation setting. I struggled with how I'd be measured. And showing up to meetings, we've talked about that a lot today, in fact, is like, well, what do you do when someone tells you, like, show me the data? Or what do you do when someone says, like, well, how can I know that what you've just said actually correlates to performance? And the charter was my way of solving for that, and we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, super important, I think, to have a charter in place. How many people work at a startup here? Self included. And so sometimes in startups, we don't do a charter because you're like, by the time I'm done with this charter, all of our priorities have shifted and changed, and I have to completely rewrite another one. So yeah, only thing constant is change in that world, of course. So I like to think of my charter as a dynamic document, right? It can absolutely change and shift with the priorities of my company and of my stakeholders, but I really like to view it as like, this is my foundation, and use that as like my guiding principle or my North Star, if you will. But you do want it to be something that's dynamic, that you can make shifts and changes to, but it gives you that great outline of what should I be doing and where should I be going.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always subject to change with the change of the priorities. And going back to the charter, how we build it, how do you decide what you're going to prioritize on? How many of you, by show of hands, have a big and like onboarding component to your, like you're hiring a lot of people. How many of you have a very important onboarding program? Show of hands. Okay. Well, where I came from, before the company I'm at now, we had that too. It was one of our growth pillars. I came from a company called NetSuite. I was one of 60 enablement professionals at that company. We trained thousands of reps every year because onboarding was so important for us. Okay? The company I'm at now couldn't care less about onboarding. They're not really hiring anybody. They might hire 1-2 reps a year. Onboarding is not one of their pillars. And so I had to kind of learn and do my discovery joining the organization to figure out like what is going to be meaningful to that executive team. What are they going to care about? It's not going to be onboarding, but continuous reinforcement. We talked multiple sessions about getting expected behaviors that lead to better conversion rate or whatever. And I had to reshuffle what I thought I knew about enablement to fit that and build that into my charter. So that's something I wanted to call out as well.
So it sounds almost like your charter not only helps you know what to do, but it kind of helps you figure out, how do I do this by myself, right? Because you came from a large team.
Exactly.
So I think that leads me perfectly, like, you've got your charter, you have all these things now. How are you going to get it all done?
Yes. And that becomes, I think, what executives ask you as well, especially a sales leader who is not so fun to deal with. I heard there's several stories of those people. But they're going to ask you, like, sure, great plan. How do you intend to do that? You're one person.
I think we're going to ask ourselves that sometimes, right?
Yeah, I think you wonder about it too.
How am I supposed to do all this?
Right, absolutely. You're like, oh, I hope I can get this plan done.
Yeah.
And I think we'll kind of bounce back and forth here on some ways to do this. But really, how good are you at managing your relationships with other partner teams? I think that's really what it really boils down to. When I was doing my discovery in the beginning to figure out that, onboarding is not so important, but continuous reinforcement is important. And when I was doing my discovery to figure out, how does sales pass a customer to customer success? What does that process actually look like? When I was asking myself these questions and meeting with different people across the organization, a big piece of this was, how am I going to partner with that person? I need their buy-in, I need their adoption, and I'm going to need them to do a lot of work for me. So how do I get them excited about it? We talked about a little bit of the WIFM in the last session. I think Craig called out that you have to give the WIFM for that team, not just sales. And so how are you building that into your charter? So what are some tips you have around that?
I think my first tip is, like, just don't try to do it all yourself. Don't. I tried. It's hard. Learn anything from me, don't try to do it all yourself. I mean, after working 80-hour weeks and up till midnight, my husband's in the back of the room, he can vouch for it. Like, I was a zombie at that point. Don't do that. Solo enablement is actually anything but solo if you're doing it right? You have to leverage your teams, leverage your subject matter experts, leverage your collaboration teams, leverage your frontline managers. You don't have to go and force people to adopt these programs. Have these guys do it. And I think you talk about the WIFM, and the part that I learned that is super beneficial for me when leaning on, like, my product, my marketing, or operations teams, because I'll have them come and not just help me with content, but, like, come lead this session. Will you do this recording for me, right? Can I record you? They love to get in front of your sellers and show them the shiny new thing that they just did. And they're really good at it, so, like, let them do that. And it gives, they then get the feedback from those teams, so they're able to help tweak that content so it makes it even better for them. So I would say, leaning on those subject matter experts, but allowing them to be part of the actual enablement part, that's been huge for me.
That's a really good call out. I agree with that. I think you also can advertise. So if you think of yourself in enablement as a business within a business, if you can see yourself, even if you're a team of 10, if you can see yourself as a business unit within the business that needs to have profit and loss, you need to have stakeholder management, you need to have investment from your executives, right? If you think about yourself like that, you also need to have kind of a marketing arm of what you're doing. So anytime that you do what she was just describing, where you grab a subject matter expert and you say, why don't you help me by actually leading? You're the expert here. Why don't you actually, like, record this? We'll make it part of our training. It's going to switch up our voices, because you don't want to just hear from me all the time. So how can we hear from you too? And then you want to really broadcast that as a big win for you and your team. So when that happens, for example, I'll tell you one example we used. There's a technical solutions team that works with our sales team. And historically, before I got to the organization, they didn't really know, like, when to call technical solutions. They didn't know when to work with them. They didn't know even who they were. Well, I started working with this team, started partnering with them on the engagement process back and forth, and they started to use our documentation, our sales process, our sales methodology in describing themselves. And I was able to basically screenshot this, send it to my sales leadership, and say, look, it's working. And it's in Slack, so it gets all the little, like, heart emojis, right? But just anytime you can find a little win like that, advertise it. You are marketing for yourself as a business within a business. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's a team sport. Enablement's a team sport, even when you are a team of one, right? So I think that takes us probably to the next hurdle when you're a team of one is how do you maximize and scale as a team of one, right? First, utilize technology. If you don't have an LMS, a CMS, some combination of the two, like it's crucial. You can only do so much, I think, without one from a scaling perspective. And then I try to just either reuse, document, record everything. And I may not reuse it all, but hey, maybe we led a session on something and it's really great, and now this is part of our onboarding path or something, because like we rolled out a new coding tool, CPQ, a month ago and did a session on that, and awesome, every new person that comes on is gonna have to learn this, so I have this done and I don't ever have to do it again.
Right, at least not for a while.
Right. until they change it again.
Yeah, you're not doing it every single time at least.
Yeah, for sure. What ways do you use to help maximize and scale?
The tools are big ones. I'm a tools person. I know Josh said, he doesn't really care about the tools. I think the tools are amazing. I think that what they can do to scale as a team of one or even a team of 10 or less, when you've got hundreds of reps to train, I think what you can do with a tool is very powerful. One of the, in fact, our first session was Atlassian, Marco, which I appreciated. We used Confluence. Confluence is our single source of truth for documentation. That's where we ask our reps to go. When I first joined the company, it was like product owned some pages, marketing owned some pages, customer success owned some pages, and reps had no idea where to go for things. But we were able to migrate that into one single space. And Confluence is how we do that. We wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have Confluence. We also have MindTickle. Is our tool of choice for LMS and for call recording. So we use that tool as well. And I think that, just first of all, getting that for our sales team changed our culture a little bit. And that's something that's hard to do as an enablement person, is change the culture. What our sales reps were doing was a bit of a black box. Now we know, because we have call recording software. And we can figure out what's working, what's not working actually on real calls. And we can correlate that back to performance and desired actions. That's a software thing. So I think tools are huge. Yeah,
tools are huge. Keeping things organized, it's a hard one. It's just a hard one for me in life in general. I'm not the most organized person. So the tools I use, I know you use MindTickle. I use SalesHood because I have amazing ways to like organize things, but I can also just point it to the original docs in the G drive that all these different people own, and they don't want me to own them because they change them all the time. And it's like, no, you can change it. That's its source of truth. I just want to organize it, and so people know where to go and find it, right? So doing that, obviously using the charter we talked about, pointing back to that when it seems like things are getting crazy, like, hey, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Aligning with those other teams for sure. And I think another big part, you talked about how onboarding is not really important to y'all right now. And similar, I'm at a smaller org. Really being mindful about your organization's enablement maturity too. Like, don't go spending all of your time building like onboarding by role when you really have like a pipeline problem and no one knows where your content lives, right? Like, so just kind of being real with where you're at, I think is huge.
That is such a big topic. That should be in your charter, for sure. For me, it's my third section.
Keep it real.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my charter out, by the way, if anybody's interested. But my third section of the charter was basically me telling the executive teams, like, don't measure me as if we're here, because we are here. Right? I think a lot of times a sales leader, if left to their own devices, will say, well, draw the correlation. Draw the correlation between like this action and increased revenue. But that's a level of maturity that doesn't just happen right away. Right? There's like layers, right? There's like a random maturity, which is what happened 5 months ago before I joined the company, which is like projects happen ad hoc. There's no consistency to them. They're not being observed for whether or not they worked. That's kind of where we started. And I had to level set with our whole executive team and tell them, look, don't assess me as if we've been having this for like 3 years. Okay? We have this for 3 months. So here's how you measure me instead. And I was able to change their thinking so that they gave me a lot of grace and didn't expect so much from me.
Yeah. Or you get the sales leader that's like, hey, we've given away too much discount. I really think we need to do some trainings on how to better negotiate. And you're like, you really actually need trainings on how to do better discovery. Let's start at the beginning, you know? So being real with like where your team's at, where you're at, like where the company's at and what those priorities are, so you know like where to scale. Tools are gonna be huge, obviously helping you scale, and then leaning on all the other people. The other huge piece in just being an enablement person of one, army of one, if you will, is you really have to be strategic, right, with everything you do. So who here feels like a strategic partner versus just an order taker from sales?
Strategic partners, raise your hand. Okay.
Got some.
All right.
We got a good amount. Awesome.
This is a safe space. Order takers, raise your hand. Okay. So then a project for you is how do we get you in the other column, right? But I appreciate the safe space.
Yeah.
How do you prioritize?
How do you prioritize? So when I think about being strategic, I think about strategic engagement. And what's that? To me, that means aligning with your stakeholders by speaking their language, right? And prioritizing their goals and their why. So what does that mean? That means you're speaking with your C-levels, your execs. You're not gonna talk to them about how much the content you just got from marketing is no good, right? They don't care about that. You need to speak their language. We're gonna talk go-to-market strategy, growth and scale, what are their expectations, and really understand what's driving them and the business. What's their why? And how do you best measure enablement results all the way up to that why, right? But you gotta start by speaking their language and the things that they care about, and then making sure that you align programs to those goals.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned it like being a business, right? These are your investors, right? You're a business, these are your investors. They give you funding, they give you authority, but you gotta deliver results and growth. And as long as you do, they'll give you more funding and a little more authority maybe, right? But as long as you're speaking their language and they feel that they can trust that in you, that's the first place to start. But then there's other teams you work with, and they may not care about the same things, right?
Yes, yeah, you gotta meet individually with different teams because, yeah, they see things very differently. How I talk to marketing is very different from how I talk to the overall executive group, very different from how I talk to sales team. So understanding those different languages, which just takes time unless you've somehow been in all those functions yourself, but just learning the with them, the what's in it for them is ultimately what it ties back to. Learning the vocabulary, learning their plan. So for example, with marketing again, what is marketing's big plan for the year? And how am I aligning my priorities so that I successfully partner with them? How am I aligning what I'm doing so that I can say, I've found 5 opportunities for us to work together this year based on my priorities and your priorities. And sharing how that's a dual win.
And
right?
then add a layer, and then how do we make both of those priorities go up to my C-suite's priorities, right? Yeah, I think I call them my collaboration teams, and generally when I say that I mean marketing, product, and operations, right? And they make very valuable resources for us, whether it's content, whether it's messaging, whether it's processes, reports, so on and so forth. And these absolutely should be adopted by all revenue teams. The problem is they're not always understood or seem relevant at all to those sales or revenue teams, right? So when I think of working with those teams, I think of the trade-off there, whereas with your C-suite, it was funding and authority to the growth and everything. When I think of working with these teams, I kind of think of this trade-off of adoption, right? They're making all this great content. All they really want is for sellers to use it, right? Well, how do we help them get it adopted? Right. And then I say, well, I really want you to do things this way instead of that way. So how do I get you to adopt this way of doing things? And I think speaking those languages, working together, understanding what's their why, right, can help you to kind of reach that arm out and go, hey, if we can do it this way, we can both drive what we both give us to both of our goal of getting, I want your content to be adopted, you want your content to be adopted, we need it presented in a better way. So it's more, easier for sales to understand or to use. Yeah. Right?
That's a unique value you provide as an enablement person. How many of you have been on a call let's say between sales and, depending on the size of your company, product. How many of you have been on a call with sales and product and they're talking to each other and they're very clearly not getting each other? Has that happened? Yeah? That is a unique value you provide as an enablement person to translate. Hey, sales cares about results. Sales wants to see numbers. Sales wants this one-pager. Okay? They don't want a 50-slide deck. They don't want to hear about your product roadmap. They want what they can sell today, how much it costs, what's the contracting process look like, and they want to do this in a very engaging and interactive way. They don't want to just listen to you talk to them. So let's work together so that you now present things to them in a way they want to hear it. And then you go to your sales leadership and you say, like, product doesn't know our language. They've not carried a quota. So let's go easy on them. And let's ask them for these very deliberate things.
I thought you were going to say give them all a quota.
Well, yeah. I mean, that would be nice. They feel our pain.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the roadmap. I'm just like, if you show them the roadmap, they're going to sell the roadmap.
Absolutely.
Like, come on, guys. And then they get mad, and the seller's like, what? You showed it to me. I thought it was fair game.
Yeah, I was only half listening when you brought up that slide, but it looked really great,
cool.
so I'm selling it now. Yeah,
Totally.
Happens all the time.
And then think about the teams that you're working with, your sellers, your leaders, if you support customer success teams, right? The teams that you're supporting. How do we strategically engage with those teams, right? And again, it's about speaking their language, right? What do they need to align to their prospects and customers? What makes your programs effective for them? Why do they do what they do, right? Not everyone wakes up in the morning and is like, sales is amazing. Some people do, but there's a why behind there, right? So I think really getting to understand what drives them is super helpful and super impactful to understand their goals and how you can help them get there. And when they feel that from you, they're like, yeah, I absolutely want to do this third certification you rolled out in a quarter because it's going to get me to my goal.
Totally.
Maybe don't do 3 certifications in a quarter, just saying.
Yeah. And a lot of these tips, the things we're sharing now, I think are generally helpful for any enablement person. But to sort of tie this back to what you do when it's just you, position yourself, again, going back to the charter, direct yourself, be self-directed, don't be an order taker. And by that I mean, I'm not naysaying any order takers in the room, but get to a point where your manager or the team you support does not feel the need to look over your shoulder. It takes being very proactive to do that. So when I set up my charter and when I approached my executive team about it, no one was asking me for this stuff. They hadn't yet thought through how they were going to measure me. They hadn't yet thought through what my cadence with them would look like. I approached them. I said, I've built this thing. I want to share it with you. I'm forming this enablement advisory board, which means all the executives. And I want your feedback and input. And when I did that, by just the virtue of setting that meeting up and leading that meeting, they didn't feel like they needed to worry about Brandon. They didn't feel like they needed to watch me all the time and make sure that they were giving me things to be measured against, because they saw that I was measuring myself and they saw that I was teaching them how to work with me. Mm-hmm. So going back to how do you do this as a team of one, and we're happy to take questions. That's why I don't have any slides, so keep the questions. Is just that self-directed nature.
Yeah.
You're the one approaching them. You're the one bugging them. You're the one saying, let's get this thing done. This is your priority, but I'm doing it for you. Now get out of my way. And they will start to respect you a lot more, I think.
Definitely, yeah. And you're speaking their language, right? They're like, cool, he gets it, right? We can trust you. And being able to do that, and it's not easy to shift gears to do that across all those different teams, right? But when you're the one-man bands, if you will, you've got to be able to make those pivots, right? And we do a similar advisory board, but ours is flipped. We have a handful of our revenue teams and sellers, and then I put them in the room with product and marketing, and then I walk out. No, I'm kidding. No, and we talk about like, hey, here's what we're thinking. What do we think of this? And they give their honest feedback. Hey, how do we think customers are going to take this, right? And we didn't have that prior to having enablement where I'm at, right? And so it's been really great feedback across both teams, and I feel like they all understand each other a little bit better. But it's getting better content, I think, that the sellers can use, because they get to give that feedback and like, hey, I think this is going to land great. I see that being a problem. I hear a lot of this on calls, so on and so forth. So really being strategic in those ways and understanding, again, what drives each of these different teams, because they all have wildly different goals. And then how do we march those all the way up to the goals at the top? Because ultimately, if you're not hitting those, you're probably not going to be around for long, right?
Yeah. Ultimately, all this does tie back to how do I keep my job, right?
How do you keep a job?
A lot of this stuff is how do I keep my job? How do I keep adding value? How do I keep people seeing that I'm adding value, whether I think I'm adding value or not?
I think the most important way, building trust and relationships.
I think you're right.
Right? Like, if you can build a strong relationship with those teams and trust with your stakeholders, that's going to be the foundation to literally anything we talked about, right? Like you have to be able to build those trust and relationships and not be like, but marketing and product did this and sales ops isn't helping me with this. Like you have to be able to navigate those relationships and build strong relationships. And to me, I just try to do that by being as authentic and genuine as I can. I can only be who I am, and sometimes unapologetically, that's who I am. And I just got to show up, and that means that when something's not working, you just got to own it. Like, hey, this didn't work out the way I hoped. I thought it was going to be great, and it kind of sucked. So we're going to make the changes, and I'm going to own that it didn't work. And an example I have of that recently, I do these Enablement Impact emails monthly to my exec team. And it's just here's what we've been working on, here's the impacts we're seeing, here's and they're great, right? You get to write a few bullets talking about the amazing things that you're doing and then the things you're gonna work on next. And it was about the second one that I had sent out, and I was actually meeting with my COO, and I go, hey, do you mind if I run this by you real quick? There's a few numbers that I have on here tying back to some metrics. I just want to make sure that they're on, because her team owns those numbers. And she reads through it and she goes, can I be honest? Yes, a little worried. She goes, this is great, it's cool, we're doing great things. And I read the last one and it was cool, we did great things. It just feels a little rah-rah. Okay. I would rather hear what didn't work and what did you learn. Tell me what worked, that's great. But if I get like a few more of these, they're just not as impactful. And I was like, okay, yeah, what didn't work? Great, so let's add some bullets and say, hey, we tried to do this and we found that this didn't work, so here's what we learned, we're gonna pivot and do that. And I sent that email, and that was my January email. And after getting maybe one or two responses from the exec team, I got like the entire exec team responding to that email, like, oh, this is so amazing. Like, I love to hear what you're working on and the things that you guys are learning. And so being able to just own when you didn't do something right? Or you rolled out a program that didn't do what you thought it was gonna do, and just owning it and following that up with like what you learned and what you're gonna do differently next time goes way further in building trust with those people than just touting all your wins, right? So I think it's super important to be able to own that stuff.
That is such a great story, and it's so true. And again, going back into my charter, I keep tying back to that because it's kind of the linchpin for me in my role for everything that I've done so far. But how many of you have been accused of like being too rose-tinted glasses, like too positive, it's all rah-rah, it's not actually that impactful? Yeah, me, I do that too. I try to look on the positive. I'm a hopeless optimist.
Who's just cynical?
Any cynics in the room?
Yes, I usually am too.
But opening the first couple of slides in my charter that I presented live to my executive audience was all the things that were wrong. All the things that, if they aren't keeping them up at night, probably should be keeping them up at night. Things I discovered in meeting with individual reps, things I discovered in meeting with the relationship between our chief product officer and our head of sales and how they're not really getting along, how that's hurting our business. I really highlighted a lot of those things. It was a little bit scary to do, and I think I saw some executives start to sweat on the call. But that helped me. I saw them like straighten up in their seats, and they kind of were paying more attention to me now. They weren't just gonna like, oh, here's a guy who's just gonna rah-rah us to death. they started to pay attention. They started to lean in.
Yeah.
So it's a really good story you shared about, don't just only paint the positive, but talk about what's not working and why you're trying to change that.
You have to have the tough conversations, right? Yeah. And usually we're the people that are in that position to see what's going on and call things out. Like, hey, I'm seeing that this is probably not happening the way we should, and no one else has called attention to it, or no one else has noticed it because they're not seeing things from all the different angles that we get to see things from. And so it's building trust is huge, and by being open, honest, genuine, calling out the hard things, having the tough conversations. I'm super fortunate that I have a great relationship with my SVP of sales, but we have some tough conversations, like where people are like, "Are you guys fighting?" And I was like, "No, what are you talking about? We're getting things done, But we can be very honest with each other like that, right? And it helps to build that relationship so that we can work together and get things done, because we're in the trenches together, right? So you have to have that. But you also have to have it with your other teams, your collaborators and your sales teams, right? They need to feel like they can trust you too, and that they can believe in what you're doing, right? So like, keep your promises, or if you have to change things, be open and honest about it. Like, hey, I know we were working on this, we're gonna have to pivot, here's why. Apologize, guys. And as long as you can do that, I think they feel like, oh, okay, that we're good. I don't feel like she's like selling us a dream that we're never gonna hit or something, right? And then you have to be able to like be honest about how you're measuring success with them, and when someone needs to step it up, right? And that may not be a conversation you have with the seller, but you need to be able to have that conversation with their manager and be very honest about things. Or maybe the manager is the person that needs to step up. You got to go, hey, we got to get this going, right? And you just got to feel like you can build those relationships and have that trust and be able to have the tough conversations when it's necessary.
Totally. So we've covered a lot. I think we've covered the charter, we've covered how to build relationships, how to scale as a one-person
Scaling,
team,
being strategic,
how to prioritize, and how to make sure your priorities get through the noise, as opposed to being told what to do instead. So let's try to open it up for questions. I think that's a lot more engaging than us talking some more. And there's one question in the back, but let's take yours first.
When you have an advisory board or tiger team, or whatever you want to call it, you're getting input from, let's say, top sellers or managers. I feel like anytime that I've had kind of those round table groups, they always kind of fizzle out because they have so many ideas for what they think enablement should look like, and how programs they want to roll out, things that we should be doing. But if you're only one person, or even one person who owns a program within your team, and they have ideas about your program, say sales methodology that you're in charge of, it's just not scalable it's all great ideas, but it's like you're only one person. So how do you kind of manage that relationship in that you want them to feel heard and you like getting their ideas and their input, but you can't implement every single one of their ideas?
Okay, so for the listeners virtually, the question was, if you open yourself up to feedback from an advisory board of some kind, your top sellers, your top reps, whatever, and they're presenting you with a million and one ideas for the future, you obviously, as a team of one, can't implement all those ideas.
Even if you're a team of 20, you probably wouldn't implement all those ideas.
Yeah, even massive teams. I came from a team of 60, like I said, and we still got way more feedback than we could handle. So how do you manage that? Is that your question? Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I'll go first, and then if you want to add on to that.
Yeah.
So I think that in terms of the specific advisory board, if you're able to meet with those members ahead of time and try and get them bought into what it is you're going to be presenting, what it is you're going to be sharing with them, a lot of times they feel like it's their idea too, ahead of time. That's not to say you still won't get a million and one ideas, but a lot of times if the core ideas of what you're building or working on or already planning to do for the quarter, you've already agreed with them on that. A lot of times when they show up to the meeting, it's more of a like, I'm so excited we're doing this together. Instead of oh, you're just now showing me this? Well, here's how I think you should do it differently. Here's how I think you're wrong, and here's how I want you to do it instead. If you wait until the meeting, it's almost like you're too late. That's my advice.
I actually agree with that 100%. And same with, it's the other way too. If maybe you're trying to like pitch a program up, and you have to go in and meet with people, and like, don't let that be the first time they're hearing about it. Meet with each one individually so you walk in a room knowing that you either do or don't have support. So I think it's the other way around too, right? Hey, this is what we're focusing on today. I want to hear your feedback on X, Y, and Z. So that way that session doesn't just go off the rails. It's not necessarily, hey, here's a free-form session to tell me everything that you want enablement to do, right? Now, does that still happen sometimes? Absolutely. To me, the easiest way to work with that and determine, is this actually a priority or is this just an idea, is to make them give you that information. If you have an idea, like, hey, I think we should have more enablement on X. Awesome, tell me what about X we're lacking. Like, they have to come with the facts, and you can even outline a doc like, hey, you want to submit something to enablement? Here's the information we need so we know how to prioritize and how to build what it is that you want. Mm-hmm. So, I had someone come up and go, hey, I really feel like we finally migrated to Lightning last year. Like, finally, they had to pry Classic out of our cold dead hands. But so now we have some sellers who are like, I feel like we could really use some more Lightning training. And I go, great. What about Lightning do you still need training on? And no one could answer the question. And then it's just like, okay, it was just where things are, and that just takes time, right? So it's like determining, is this actually a priority and initiative, or is it just an idea? And usually when you ask them for more information, you can suss those out pretty quickly. Okay, how do you deal with information overload, Slack, emails, meetings, etc.? If you find out, let me know.
I'm dealing with this one right now. I've got people who are very loud advocates for Slack, and you can see their name on Slack everywhere. They're in every channel. They're in every thread. And then I've got people who are completely the opposite, and they hate Slack for that reason, and they'll like only commit to emails. Like, if you want them to have that information, it's got to be an email format, because they're not going to be the ones digging through Slack, right? So how do you deal with that is the question. And I think what I've found, and this isn't the best answer, but I am just a chameleon. If you're my chief revenue officer, you hate Slack, I'm going to email you. If you're that really noisy, loud sales leader that's very outspoken and you're in every Slack thread, I'm just going to respond to you there. I haven't really got far enough in my role personally to dictate the terms of how you can communicate with me quite yet. So that's how I'm handling it. I wouldn't say it's elegant, but that's how I'm doing it today.
Yeah, dealing with the information overload, we use Slack to emails, meetings, et cetera. It's hard for anyone. I'm fortunate enough in that the company I work for is actually a workforce analytics and productivity tool. So we can I say, hey, look, this is how many times a day I'm distracted by Slack. This much. It's cutting into my focus time, and I have the metrics to prove it. So then I can just mute Slack for a while and say, hey guys, focus time, right? So we're open about that because it's what we do. But outside of that, I do the typical, productivity things. Calendar blocking. My calendar's color coded, so I can look at it and know oh gosh, there's 3 internal meetings today versus oh, I get to have more fun meetings or something, right? And I think that just helps to kind of get you in your mindset and where you want to go. And then being able to hey, I'm blocking this time on my calendar because I actually have to work on things, so please don't schedule me during this time. But it's a tough one for sure. All right, how do you build visibility, trust, and impact in the field when you all can't be in all places at all times? My company's remote, so I can actually speak to this.
Same here.
Yeah, and I think probably most of us are these days. It's tougher, right? Because you're not having those face-to-face meetings and so on. And by this time, we're all just zoomed out, right? But you have to just carve out that time to have those meetings with folks and put those teams together. But I think the best way to do that is making it very clear why we're meeting. We're not just, hey, let's just jump on and people want to know why they're jumping on another Zoom or something like that. So if you're doing either a product advisory board or a one-on-one with one of your stakeholders, just being very clear from the beginning, even before you're scheduling the message, hey, I'm going to put some time on your calendar next week. I really want to understand what your biggest goal for Q2 is and how I can help you drive that. And then they'll be happy to meet with you. But I think just being open and upfront about why you're trying to take their time in the first place, to me, that's always been the most beneficial.
Yeah, I agree. I might add to that a little bit with saying that, when it comes to, the question is build visibility and impact. And I alluded earlier that if you're a business within a business, that means you also need a marketing arm. How are you advertising yourself? And something that I will do quite frequently is following a meeting or following a successful project closure, I'm often the one who's like spouting the word of how well that worked, right? For better or for worse. I'm usually the one who's saying like, look, so-and-so team that we've never historically worked well with, now they're using our language into how they work.
That's really cool, by the way.
And when you can do that, but making it visible in public. So then I screenshot that, I put it in our team sales general chat. Check it out, so-and-so's using our language. We're speaking the same vocabulary here. And that's just one unique, nuanced example, but market yourself.
Yeah.
So that's how I would build visibility and trust, is how I would do that.
You
I'm
have
sharing
to call
every
out the
win that I
wins.
find. Yeah.
Have to call out the wins. And then I also do a QBR with my stakeholders every quarter, so they get to see, hey, here's what we've done, and if you're not doing one already, you should absolutely be doing one, because that's how you get that additional time to show what you're impacting, right? Or enablement impact emails, just don't make them too rah-rah. Make sure you call out where you messed up, But those are all great ways too to continue to build that when you're not having that in-office space time or people are, in the field and so on and so forth.
Totally. The last question I think we have time for, and I'm really glad someone asked this, can you speak more about the charter? How you developed it? What yours look like? I'm very happy to share my charter following this.
Send it to all of y'all.
I can send it. If anybody wants to grab my information, I'm very happy to share a copy of it. I'll take our personal information out. But I did bring a book, and you'll see it is aptly named Sales Enablement. It is by Byron Matthews, Tamara Shank. It's a couple years old. It's just called Sales Enablement, very easy to find. And this is my Bible for how I built my charter. It goes through line by line. It gives you a template. It's amazing. And I built this, and it went flawlessly with my executive team. So highly recommend that you read that.
We'll take Chelsea's quickly.
Yeah.
Advice for someone transitioning after a RIF. You had a team, and now you're a team of one. Man, that's tough. I think everything we said, really, right? And it's probably going to start with don't feel like you suddenly have to do what everyone else did yourself. Is your workload going to increase? Probably. Let's be realistic. But now you need to lean on those other teams, those collaboration teams, your sales leaders, your marketing, where you maybe used to lean on your actual team. And if they know what happened, your company went through a RIF, I would be amiss to think that people wouldn't be very understanding of that and support you in that.
Yeah, it also gives you an opportunity to reset expectations. Whatever the expectation was when you were a larger team, now you just have to communicate that it's different now.
That dynamic document, time to make some dynamic changes.
Got to reset. You got to, you know what? It's me now, and this is what I can get done. And
Totally.
This is how I plan to do it. So thanks for listening.
Awesome. Thanks,
We're
everyone.
Out of time.